Wellspring, what's up? One thing you should know about me is whenever I feel uncomfortable or awkward, I will try to use humor as a defense mechanism for dealing with those emotions. So when I come up here, I'm still semi-new, so there's still some nerves when I get up here. So normally I will try and start off with like some sort of joke or some sort of bit to kind of break the ice, make me feel a little bit more comfortable. But I spent a week trying to think of something funny to do, and each thing was just as lame as the next. So I was like, okay, maybe I should just try something different and just start. So I'm just going to do that. I feel like you might be anticipating a joke. That wasn't a setup for a joke. I'm just actually going to start, all right? So I'm going to pray. Dear Heavenly Father, just thank you for today. Thank you for this group here, Lord. Thank you for the worship, Lord. That was just hitting today, Lord. And just thank you for being in this room and who you are to us, Lord. And I just want to pray as we go into your word that we can focus up. And Lord, I just want to pray all this in your name. So, do you guys know who this guy is? Michael Wazowski from the hit motion picture Monsters Inc. Oh, I'm sorry. I just dropped the mic. Oh, speaking of drop the mic, guys, it was all a setup for a bit. Thank you. Thank you. Speaking of dropping the mic, have you ever had a drop the mic moment where you were maybe in a debate with someone, talking with someone, and you were right? Like there was no doubt you were right. You had all the facts. You were the one who, no matter what, at the end of the conversation, you were going to be right. And you just were waiting for that time to just let them know and just drop the mic. So I had one with Sky a little while ago. So we were having a conversation. We had experienced something. Oh, thank you. We had experienced something that there was hype for it, but it didn't live up to the hype. So we did it, whatever it was. It might have been a restaurant or something. And we were talking, and Sky goes, yeah, it was just nothing to ride home about. And I was like, what? Nothing to what? How much? Nothing to ride home about. And I'm like, well, she's like, like the saying. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the saying. So no, I don't know what you're talking about. It's nothing to write home about. She's like, no. Nothing to ride home about. It's like, it's nothing to, ride home and tell your parents about. And I'm like, no. The saying it's you would write home, in olden times, you would write home and tell your family about it. That's the saying, that's where it comes from. She's like, no. In olden times, you would ride a horse home and tell your family about this thing. And so what we did, what anybody would do in that situation, is you Google it to see who was right. And we Googled it. And when you Google something, and it's a question, and you're like, is it this or that? But you always see that someone else has Googled that before. Like multiple people have Googled it. Well, I Googled nothing to ride home about, and no one's ever thought that was a saying before. Sky's the only person in the world that has ever thought that. But I was able to drop the mic and prove her wrong. But really, it was for her, because she's my wife. I don't want her embarrassing herself in conversations if that sentence ever comes up, embarrassing herself and my family. So I did it for her. But I dropped the mic right there. I was right in that conversation, and it's good to be right. In marriages, a win is a win. And so we've been in this series called Making Waves, and we're going to look at a Jesus drop the mic moment tonight. And so what's been happening this past chapter is these religious leaders, Pharisees and the Sadducees, they've all been just challenging Jesus. It's been verse after verse after verse of them lobbing up some questions or challenges, and Jesus just kind of hitting them out of the park, every single one. But tonight is another challenge question from the Sadducees. So let's get right into it. Luke 20:27. There came to him some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection. And they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, having a wife but no children, the man must take the widow, and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife and died without children. The second and the third took her, and likewise all 7 left no children and died. Afterwards the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For all 7 had her as a wife. So the Sadducees asked this question, and realistically, it's kind of a dumb question when you really look at it, because What they're trying to do is they're trying to trap Jesus. They're trying to get him to trip up on his words. They're trying to get him to, so they mentioned Moses. They said, Moses said this, and this is the law. So they're trying to get him to go against the law and say something against the law. Really try to trap him and so they could get a gotcha moment. But this whole chapter has kind of been that. And each time, Jesus will sidestep the question. He'll avoid the trap. And he will give a reply that really conveys an important teaching, an important message each time. So the Sadducees and the Pharisees, we hear those names and we hear them a lot, but there's some difference between the two of them. And the main one, they're kind of political rivals, really, the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And the Sadducees are the ones asking this question. So for them, they really only believed that the inspiration for the Old Testament stops with the first 5 books. So anything after the first 5 books, they had a lower view on. They completely ignored Pharisee traditions. They didn't believe in an afterlife, a resurrection, or a final judgment. They basically believed that this was it, that life led to nothingness, that God punished the wicked here on earth, and he rewarded the righteous here on earth. And this was basically it. So the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they had different views. They were political rivals. They really didn't see eye to eye on a lot, but they had a mutual understanding of hating Jesus. They hated him. And they wanted to always catch him slipping. They wanted to prove that he was not who he said he was. So here the Sadducees are asking a question. And really, in my profound way of speaking, it's a dumb question. And speaking of dumb questions, I work in youth ministry. And I have run into some questions, not dumb questions. If you have a student here that goes to our youth group, they've never asked me a dumb question. But there are questions that are just wild, and you're like, I don't know where your mind was when you thought of that. One, I remember, it was a gospel message I was giving, and a student raised his hand, and I was like, oh my gosh, like God's working in this kid's heart. Like he's going to ask a question. This is going to be great. And he was like, yeah, did Jesus wear like sneakers? Like, did he have sneakers back then? I'm like, yeah, Air Jesuses. That's what he wore back then. But sometimes I'm just like, I don't know where this kid's mind was. But one that I remember that could have got out of hand very quickly. I go to a winter retreat every year with the youth group. I've been on one every year since 2013. And there's all these other churches that go. So there's this one church, it's Sky's old church, that we have a really good relationship with. Her youth pastor was a youth pastor when I started, and he really helped me get used to youth ministry and whatnot. And their youth pastor now I have a good relationship with. But in snow camp, winter retreat culture, one thing you do is you prank each other if you have a good relationship with another church. And so they started it. I will say that. We did not start it. They started it. But it started out innocent. They toothpaste on light switches, and we put Vaseline on their doorknobs and stuff like that. And they clogged our toilets. Just simple stuff, right? Sometimes it got out of hand. But this one year, this legend kind of grew, and when snow camp was coming up, we were like, what are we going to do to Calvary? And one year I brought saran wrap because they drive vans there, so we wanted to saran wrap their van because that's a cool, fun prank. So we were staying up till like 3 o'clock in the morning to make sure they were asleep to go and do it. And while we were waiting, they were like, what else could we do to their vans? And I'm like, okay, this is not going to be good. And one of the kids said, hey, can we break some eggs on their windshield, right? Like move the yoke around so it's all over, and then we'll take their windshield wipers. That would be a great prank, right? And I'm like, yeah, so what's the prank? That they fly off a cliff and they can't see? Yeah, it's a great prank. And then this other kid was like, hey, can we maybe let the air out of their tires? That would be a fun prank, right? And then this other kid was like, well, can we just slash their tires? How about we just do that? And I was like, and then this other kid said, well, if you only slash 3, then insurance can't get involved. So we'll just slash 3. And I'm like, okay. And these turned into felonies very quickly. And this is why I always had to be involved, or else things would happen. The other youth pastor had told me once that their idea of a prank one year, because it wasn't just our group, their idea was the dorms are across from each other, so they were like, oh, let's tie a rope around the doorknob so they can't get out, and then start a little fire underneath the door to make them think that there's a fire, and then they can't get out. And so their idea was to burn the building down and murder us. But you run into some questions that are kind of dumb in youth ministry, just realistically. And this is really a dumb question. It was a ridiculous scenario that these guys came up with, these Sadducees. And I could really see them being like, oh guys, we're really gonna get Jesus with this one. There's no way he's gonna be able to get out of this. Sadducees in this moment, they really thought they knew better than Jesus. They really thought, oh, we're gonna get him. And for you and I, sometimes, a lot of times, for me, I know, we think we know better than Jesus. We think that our source of truth is the better one. We think our source of truth is better than the one who actually is truth. And we come at Jesus with this incomplete understanding of a situation while not looking to seek help from him in the lack of understanding that we have. And we think, oh no, we got it. We'll come up with these ridiculous scenarios and think he can't can't get us out of this one. This is all me. I got this one. So Jesus, he answers this question in a great way. There's two different ways he answered it, and the first part is right here in verse 34. And Jesus said to them, the sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy to attain that age and to the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage, for they cannot die anymore, because they are equal to angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. So Jesus answered a complicated question in two different stages, and this is the first one. So they pulled, like I said before, they pulled from Moses, they pulled from Scripture, and they thought, oh, we're going to catch Jesus slipping. And what Jesus does here is he says pretty plainly, this age and that age, because this age is here on earth and that age is in heaven. And what he's saying is that life here on earth is completely different than life in heaven. And what they're doing is they are taking what the earthly lens that they're looking through and applying it to heaven. And the Sadducees assume that if there's an afterlife, because they didn't believe in it, but if there's an afterlife, it closely resembles the life that we're living here. And Jesus clarifies that the next life, it's going to be completely different. Marriage is an earthly thing. It's an earthly institution. It's good for earth. It's good for its time. It has a purpose. But there's no place for it in heaven. The vow, till death do us part, doesn't have meaning in heaven because there is no death in heaven. Death is confined to earth. You don't die in heaven. The concept of family changes when it comes to heaven. And what Jesus is essentially saying is, who said that there was going to be marriage in the afterlife? Because there isn't. And they asked a question about the resurrection, but brought up marriage, thinking that was going to trip Jesus up. That was their grand plan. They're really just focusing on the wrong thing. Talking about resurrection, but they're focusing on the marriage, thinking that was what was going to get Jesus to trip up. Focusing on the wrong thing. Something I think we could do a lot in our lives. I'm a gamer, so I like to play video games and whatnot. And a while ago, when I was still a teenager, I was playing this game called Red Dead Redemption, and it's a open world cowboy game, and you can really do whatever in the game. It's really fun. And there's a main story, main thing you do, and then there's side quests that you could do. One thing that I got obsessed with was there was this really cool trench coat that I wanted my guy to wear because it would have made him look good. But it was the most expensive trench coat in the game, so I had to do some work in the game to kind of get enough money. And so in the game, like I said, open world, you could do whatever. It's like the Old West. So I went into a saloon, and I sat down to play some poker. And in the game, I mean, it's a computer, so you think you could outsmart it, right? And so what I would do is I would bet a lot to make the computer think that I had a good hand, and then they would just fold. And then slowly I would get enough money in the game to get this trench coat that I really wanted. And I would do that, and it would work a little bit. And then every so often, the computer had a good hand and would stay in, and I would lose all my money. For hours I did this, because I kept losing all the money. I got all the money that I needed, and then I was like, I could just get a little more. And then I lost all the money. And I kept doing it, and I kept doing it. And literally, I'm not even kidding, for hours it was. And at the end, I lost all of it. I lost all my money. And this was pretty far into the game, so losing your money in the game is awful. So I lost all my money, and then instead of clicking one more, I exited, which saved all the progress, which meant I was screwed. And it was hours of the game playing that I completely just was off target. I was off focus. So I punched 2 holes in my wall when I was a teenager. Mom, Dad, if you're watching at home, I never told you guys that. I put up posters to cover it, and I left those posters up when I moved out. So just a heads up there. But I was so focused on the wrong thing. I was focused on this trench coat. I should have been focused on the main part of the story. And these guys talking about marriage, bringing up marriage, and Jesus is saying, like, marriage, if this is all you have to worry about, this is something only to worry about if this is all you have. But Jesus, if you're a person of faith, Jesus is everything. And he'll be everything in this life and our next. And what you and I have a tendency to do is sometimes we can pick and choose which portions of the Bible we really want to listen to. And it's our sinful nature to come at Jesus with this preconceived notion of reality and truth. And in our sinful nature, we could ourselves trap Jesus in these little boxes of our life. I mean, it's really easy to waste time and energy on little things that really don't advance the cause of the gospel. And yet they become distractions for us as Christians. And like the Sadducees, we can really easily find ourselves caught up in endless discussions that really don't lead anywhere, minor points of Christianity that we feel like people should know. And we get caught up in them and we don't realize that we're wasting time. And we could be causing needless division between not just unbelievers, but believers, our brothers and sisters themselves. Why do we get caught up in the wrong things? We get so caught up in the wrong things. Maybe it could be something like, maybe you're serving at church, but you're only serving because you want people to see how good of a Christian you are. It's getting caught up in the wrong thing. Maybe you are so busy, you got so much going on in your life that you feel like, I just don't have time to start a Bible study, or I don't have time to read my Bible. I don't have time to talk to God. It's getting caught up in the wrong thing. Maybe you're going through something super painful right now, and you don't even want to reach out to God or Jesus because you know, like, you might even feel like, well, he brought me through this. Why did he allow this bad thing to happen? It's getting caught up in the wrong thing. The second part of this answer in verse 37, Jesus says, but that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, where he called the Lord the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. Now he is not God of the dead, but God of the living, for all live to him. Then some of the scribes answered, Teacher, you have spoken well, for they no longer dared to ask him any questions. He just dropped the mic. Dropped the mic where he shut him up. They didn't want to ask him any more questions, because every time, like I said before, he's just knocking him out of the park. And after the Sadducees, they used Moses, right, to try and trip Jesus up. They used Scripture to try and trip Jesus up, try to trap him. And what did Jesus do? Who did he mention in this? What passage? Moses. He used a passage about the burning bush that he knew these religious leaders were going to take as true and wonderful. They would accept it. The burning bush. There was no Jewish person that was going to deny that. And so he used that to point to the reality of the resurrection. And while the Sadducees, they spoke of the resurrection in hypothetical terms, Jesus demonstrated that Moses assured the resurrection way back when, in the beginning parts of the Old Testament in his writings. They tried to use Scripture to trap Jesus, but then Jesus used Scripture to prove them wrong. It's cool. He shut them up. Jesus is awesome. So I don't know. So for the Sadducees, this was probably a shock to them. They might have known it, but just denied it. But finding out something was real that they didn't think was real, him bringing up Moses was them, like something that they believe, someone that they believed, everything that was said by Moses, they believed it. So now Moses is saying that there's a resurrection. So now this is a shock to them. I don't know if you've ever had or learned of something that you didn't think was real, that you find out is real. But luckily, I have a few for you guys. Number one is these guys are called quokkas, this animal right here. They are my favorite animal. I've known of these guys for a while. They live on an island in West Australia, and due to their bone structure, they look like they're always smiling. How sweet. Not only that, do they look like they're always happy, because they do. They have no natural predators because they're on this small little island. So they are very sweet. You can go to this island and they will come up to you. You can pet them, you can pick them up, you can play with them, and they won't attack you. They are dubbed the happiest animal in the world. It sounds like a fairy tale. Like, that doesn't sound real, but they are. They're real animals, and they're so cool. Another thing that I found out is real that I didn't know was real, and it kind of threw me off, was this next thing. It's lickable wallpaper. So, yeah, that was my reaction too. It's inspired by Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but this is actual wallpaper you can put up in your house. It could stay up there, and it has a taste. It has a smell, and it is edible. If you guys ever ask me to your house and tell me to lick the wall, I will not do that. Just throwing that out there, because that is weird. But yeah, I don't know who would have this, but it is a thing. It's out there. Cool. And this one was the one that threw me the most. There is an alien abduction insurance policy. A legitimate thing in a company in Florida. I did a deep dive on this one because I was like, whoa, this is weird. For $19.95 a month, you can have insurance if you're ever abducted by aliens. This company has sold 6,000 policies. And in order to qualify for a claim, you have to, 1, find your way back to Earth. I think that's assumed. And 2, this is my favorite one, you'll need the signature of an authorized onboard alien. I don't know what that means, but that's real. That's a real thing. For the Sadducees, right, they really heard, so they got that feeling you guys felt right there was, that is real? There's no way. They felt that because Jesus just proved it to them. He used Moses to prove it to him. So he sidestepped he didn't sidestep the resurrection. He sidestepped the trap that they were trying to cause, that they were trying to get him all caught up. And he pointed to the reality of the resurrection. The resurrection is real. And it's for those who follow Jesus. And these people, the Sadducees, these religious leaders, they hated him because of this very reason. Because they were so focused on all these things. They were so focused on all these things they should not have been focused on. And Jesus is pointing constantly to the resurrection. He's constantly pointing to him. Constantly pointing to what he did on the cross for us. And like we said a few weeks ago as I was up here talking about, Jesus is the cornerstone of our faith. Without Jesus, we don't have anything. Without the resurrection, we don't have anything. But we get caught up in so many things. So don't get caught up in the noise, because Jesus wouldn't want that. The noise is the devil really just speaking in your ear. Maybe it's a bit busyness of life. Like I said, you just got so much going on. You just can't take the time to talk to Jesus. There's too much. You're too busy with work, with kids, whatever it may be. Maybe it's a tough time you're dealing with, and you don't know how to get out of it. You don't know if there's an answer. You're looking for one. You've been asking God, but because you haven't gotten the answer you want, you feel like, I'm not going to ask God anymore. Maybe you're just caught up in yourself, and you feel maybe things are going awesome and things are going great, and Jesus hasn't been a part of this whole time, so I got it. I could do it all on my own. All lies by the enemy. All noise by the enemy. So our big idea today is focus on him and don't box Jesus in. And we could really box him in different parts of our life. Maybe it's one of the things I just said. Like I said, a struggle of you really feel like, I just can't do it. God can't help me out through this. Jesus can't, he's not going to be there for me, so I'm just going to box him up, shove him in the corner. I got too much going on. I don't need him. I don't have time for him. Box him up, put him in a corner. Maybe it's something more specific. It's a year. I It happens every 4 years, but there's this thing called politics. And sometimes we could really get so caught up in making sure that everyone votes for the person we think should be in office. We get so caught up in that really what that is saying is that you think that no matter who gets in office, that Jesus can't work. God can work no matter who gets in there. But we get so focused on, no, it needs to be this guy, or it needs to be this person, or it needs to be this person. No. God's going to work regardless. Let's not cause needless division. Maybe it's something I really struggle with is sharing and emotions in general. I made a joke about it before, but I really do have a hard time sharing and talking about emotions. I'm a man, so I shove them deep down, and I never talk about them. But really what that is saying is, hey, Jesus, I know you put people in my life to kind of talk about this stuff. I'm just going to box you up, though. Because I could deal with these emotions by myself. By dealing with them, a lot of times I don't deal with them. That leads to my own struggles. Boxing them up. All of these are boxes that we throw Jesus into. Now you might be sitting there and you might be like, oh, he didn't mention my box. I'm in the clear. Well, maybe I didn't specifically mention whatever it is you are dealing with or struggling with, but wherever you box Jesus in. But you know, God knows. You feel it. You probably feel that tug on your heart right now. So what my challenge for us today is to identify where you've boxed Jesus in. Really examine your life. Because he's been boxed up in different places in your life. Like I said, mine, he's boxed up in my emotions. It could be any of those things. But putting him in a box, putting Jesus in a box is really saying, I know better. I know better than him. My way is better. My truth is better. My truth, our truth, that's getting caught up in thinking we are better than Jesus, and that leads to putting him in a box. But Jesus said that he is the way, the truth, and the life. He dropped the mic. He shut people up. He reminded them what this life is really about. He reminded them what life on earth is truly about, who it should be about. So this life can throw different things at us that take our eyes off of Jesus, take our focus off of Jesus. Struggles, could be questions that you have that you just feel are just unanswered. Could be uncertainties, anxiety of what's coming in the future. You don't know. You don't know how it's going to shake out. And through tough questions, through being challenged, Jesus pointed back to the resurrection. He pointed back to him. The resurrection that he was sent to die for your sin, to take it upon himself and give us a shot to one day be with him in heaven. So no matter what it is, no matter what box you try to put Jesus into, just know that box is not big enough to hold God. Know that all of these things are just distractions by the enemy to make us think we can do this life on our own, to try to take our focus off of Jesus, what our goal is, and to just put Jesus in a box. No matter what it is, don't put him in a box. Don't try to face this life on your own. Ask him. Talk to him. He's right there. Ask him for the answers that you're looking for. He might not give the answers you want, might not be the ones that you want, or the answers you get might not be the ones that you want, but he's still there to talk to you. Trust that he'll get you through whatever it is that you are going through, because he never fails. He loves you. The God that set the galaxies in motion gave his life